And again, this is Road Dog Trucking. This is the channel that is devoted exclusively to the trucking and transportation supply chain industry. I got a brand new voice here on the program. Ladies and gentlemen, never been on before. I've got a gentleman by the name of Rick Williams. He is the Chief Executive Officer of a company called Central Oregon Truck Company. And Rick, I want to welcome you to the show, sir. You're live across North America. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Thank you for joining us on the program. Your fleet has been voted one of the best to drive for, and that's quite a deal, and I want to congratulate you on that. I want to get into some of the specifics, some information about the your parent company, Carrier's Edge. But first, though, tell folks what you do. You got to set it up for us. What do you do as Chief Executive Officer of Central Oregon Truck Company?
Well, I oversee all the operations for Central Oregon Truck. We're located out here in Redmond, Oregon, which is the Central Oregon area, and we run flatbed trucks all across the U.S. and into Canada.
I'll tell you what, it's got to be beautiful there, I would imagine, right? Just looking out the window, you probably see a lot of trees. Probably a beautiful part of the world.
Well, we're in the high desert side of the mountain, so today it's a beautiful sunny day. When I look out the window, I see about 7 mountain peaks on the Cascade Mountain Range.
Oh, for heaven's sakes! Wow. Well, it's great to have you on board. Tell folks, you mentioned flatbed. Is that one area that you guys focus on, or you guys do multiple operations?
No, we're strictly flatbed, open deck. We run heavy haul and then also the standard semi configuration. The heavy haul is up in the Northwest and into Canada quite a bit. And we are actually part of Dasky Corporation, which was purchased our company in 2013. Dasky now owns 9 operating entities across the U.S. with a complete national footprint, and all of us specialize in the open deck or specialized hauling.
Okay, now is this part of the Carrier's Edge parent company? Talk a little bit about that as well. Is Dasky connected with that? Some info on that, if you will.
Okay, no, Carrier's Edge is the company that created Best Fleets to Drive For.
Got it.
So they are the company that manages and procures all the nominations for Best Fleets to Drive For. They do the surveys, the driver surveys. They look at each company individually at what we do specifically for our driving team members, the cultures of our company, and so forth. And then through that process, they kind of bring it down to a final 69, and then you're voted as the top 20 fleets to drive for. And then at the Transportation or Truckload Carrier Association meeting in March, they will announce the overall winner for each category, but it's only out of those 20. So if you win in the top 20, that's a pretty big honor.
You bet. Yeah,
and we've now won. This is the 4th year in a row we've been given that privilege and honor.
Oh, that's an exciting thing. Absolutely. What kind of feedback are you getting from your team members? I mean, being voted one of the best fleets to drive for. I know there's going to be another determination made in March, but man, that's something to crow about. What do you think? Talk about that.
Yeah, we're very proud of it, and obviously our driving team members are a big part of that process. They do a survey that they have to do for Carrier's Edge, and you're required a certain percentage based on your fleet size. We were required to submit 71 surveys from our driving team members, and we actually had over 230 surveys submitted through our drivers. So they're the reason that we're good. They have a lot of input on what we do, how we do it, what they need, and so they push us to perform for them, and I think that they're the reason why we are in the best fleets to drive for.
Well, and talk about what this means for the drivers. They really have come up with quite a tremendous list there to get to put you guys in that category. What makes the company stand out among others? Talk about that, about maybe some of the individual components like, the culture, or maybe maybe driver management teams, things like that. Just the whole culture of what you guys do. Is that what makes you stand out above others?
All right. Well, I think probably the biggest thing is our culture. I was a former driver. I started as a driver, so I'm pretty bent towards a driver's needs, and I recognize the challenges and what kind of a tough job our driving team members have in front of them every day. A lot of drivers work in the office. So I think our culture is probably the largest piece, but we provide our driving team members with all the necessary items they need to do their job and do it well, from education and training to all the simple things in a daily life. We try to really perform with a heart of a servant and make sure that we're giving them their needs so that they can be successful and that they're making a good living. Of course, pay is going to be a part of that. But I would tell you that we treat our drivers very well. We don't treat them like a third-party provider or necessary evil. They're employees of our company, and they're just as important as I am.
And
success.
And from what you're describing, it sounds like the open door policy, the transparency is really what makes a difference. In other words, is that something that maybe a lot of maybe other trucking companies can learn from? Open the door to the drivers. Be transparent. Give them a voice in the communication and in the business processes out there. In other words, walking with them hand in hand, so to speak, through the business process.
Oh, absolutely. I agree completely. My office sits right off of the operation floor. Doors open all day. I have breakfast once a week with every new driver that comes into our company, and I allow them to interview the company and ask any question. I'll freely speak, and I'm very open about it. I see my drivers every day. They come into my office on a daily basis, say hi. We do lots of fun events in the summertime. We have a week-long driver appreciation week where we have bands and bounce houses, and we invite their families. So we do a lot of, I think, special events for our driving team, and we take as good a care of them as we possibly can.
Let me get your thoughts about bringing new folks into the trucking industry. I think everybody knows we've got a graying of the driver population out there. A lot of drivers maybe in their 50s or 60s, and they're getting ready to to hang up the keys and go fishing or do something else. But from your vantage point, talk about getting the millennial into the trucking industry. A lot of folks have talked about allowing drivers to maybe operate or cross state lines, drive across state lines, interstate driving as compared to intrastate. Is that something the industry needs to look at? Do we need to provide more technology for the millennials? I'm talking about in the 20-year-old age bracket out there. What are you hearing from drivers from that standpoint? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I've long been an advocate that we need to change and create an avenue for attrition into our industry. And probably the biggest hurdle that we have is young drivers. So if you're like me, I was an unskilled worker or a skilled worker at some point in time, but I didn't have a college education. I came out of high school, and I could drive intrastate at 18 years old. I started driving actually at 20. Couldn't drive interstate till I was 21. But then the challenge is really the insurability of a 21-year-old, and it just doesn't really exist in our industry. Most insurers require that the driver be 23. So what happens is young adults go out and start making money doing something else. And when they start making money doing something else in a different industry where they can be insured, what happens? Well, they create bills. Once you create bills, you limit your ability to switch gears, and change career paths. So we've got to do something with that dead zone period that creates the ability for a 21-year-old to drive a truck and earn a living and do it safely.
From the vantage point of what you're describing, I've long been an advocate of a graduated licensing system, or maybe the other side of the coin is maybe have somebody that's 18, maybe start out in the shop, working on trucks, learning the complexities of working on the trucks, how they operate, how to fix them, and things like that. And then eventually, when they turn 21, maybe get into driving, getting on board with a trainer, and then spending some time out behind the wheel with the trainer on the road, and then going out on their own. Would that be a way to go? I know we've got a terrible diesel technician shortage at the moment. Would that be something to do?
It would be. I mean, I can tell you, I partnered with our local community college here and created along with our Kenworth dealership, which is right next door, they're partnered with them for a diesel technology course, and then I partnered with them for a ground transportation logistics training that also included an extended graduated CDL class and driving class that included an internship as a driver. And so we're getting that off the ground right now. I strongly believe that driving a truck is a great job for young men and women prior to starting families. It's much more difficult to manage family life once you have a family. I'm not saying it's impossible. Many thousands do it. But my thought process was to give them a 2-year degree in ground transportation logistics, also getting them their license to drive and operate a truck on a interstate level. And then when they go make your money, go see some of the country, figure out where you want to settle down and be, and then you use that education and your real life experience in trucking to become a logistics professional.
And from what you're describing there, with the education and the training and maybe the partnership with the community colleges, for example, these are good jobs. I mean, these are jobs like with what you have that are paying good wages, right? I mean, trucking is really come a long way, and that's something I think the industry needs to tout and to talk about the opportunities that are there. You just don't simply just go and do one thing. There's so many different aspects to the trucking and supply chain industry that, man, you can make it a 40-year career if you wanted to, correct?
Oh, absolutely. I absolutely agree. I mean, when I look at Central Oregon area, the median income here in Central Oregon area is about $35,000 a year. Our average driver makes $57,000 a year, and that's before benefits, which we pay 100% of the benefits. So add another roughly $4,500 to that number. So, and that's our average guy.
Yeah.
So, there is room for young men and women to make a very good living, well above the livings that people within their communities make by driving truck. But then additionally, like you said, there's so many opportunities in logistics and trucking, whether you're become a salesperson, a planner, a driver manager, a recruiter. You can also get out of trucking and go to work for a rental car agency with logistics and planning there.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
You can go to work for a shipper. You can go to work for a receiver. There's tons of opportunity when it comes to all sorts of ground transportation logistics.
You mentioned you were a driver at one point. Now you are the chief executive officer. Do you ever sit back in your chair and say, man, the sky's the limit here? You got to be very pleased with what you've accomplished as you've come along.
Well, I'm humbled. I've been very fortunate. Had to work very hard, but
sure.
I mean, I look back and I still occasionally get in a truck, and I enjoyed driving truck when I was younger. It was a great job.
Yeah.
And today I get to meet a lot of people and see a lot of things, and I enjoy talking to the families of folks within our company. And we have 400 employees, and it's fun to be fortunate enough to be part of that. But the reality is there's been a lot of people that have helped me on the way.
Yeah, and I think the great thing about it, you mentioned a lot of great folks helped you along the way, but man, what great people, right? I mean, that's really at the heart of the trucking industry. Every single person, that works the docks or drives the trucks or, maybe does payroll or works in the office, they're all dedicated to the mission of excellence. And this is what really, I think, helps make the difference, is having team members that are on the same page. How critical is that in your estimation, that common goals are worked for? How important is that in your estimation?
That kind of comes back to culture.
Yeah.
People are business. I tell people all the time, come into this building on Sunday when no one's around, and it's just a shell with a logo on the outside. The only time you feel this business is when people are in it. And for me, high-quality people, our driving team, they execute what they need to do on a daily basis very well, and they're safe, and they care for one another. It's all about people. If you don't have good people, you're not going to win the battle.
Yeah.
So I'm a big believer in people, and that's why we have great people. We have great people internally. We have great people on our external driving team that just do a wonderful job. And they should be proud of one another, because our safety ratings are all a result of their actions and their good driving. So I'm very proud of them.
Yeah, outstanding. Rick, I got a break. I'm coming up on traffic and weather. So hold on for just a minute, drivers. I've got Rick Williams, a brand new voice on the program. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Central Oregon Truck Company, voted one of the best fleets to drive for in America, and that is quite an accomplishment. We'll talk more about that in a minute, and when we come back, I also want to get Rick's thoughts on a couple of items going on in D.C., wanted to talk about the Trump administration platform, the talk about less regulations. Would that have a beneficial impact on the trucking industry? You guys have heard the story about, Mr. Trump wants to roll, for every new regulation rolled out, two that have got to be rolled back. I wanted to get Rick's take on that. And, just the overall state of the economy out there, what's going on with the economy in general. How does that translate to the economics of what's going on in trucking? All right, if you want to jump in, the number. First, so let me update what is going on with traffic and weather this minute on SiriusXM.
This is Road Dog Trucking News with Mark Willis.
All right, drivers, hey, welcome back. It is now 27 minutes, and after the hour, and again, if you were just now tuning in to the program on this Monday at 3:27 in the East, I got a brand new voice on the show. Great pleasure to talk with Rick Williams, the Chief Executive Officer of Central Oregon Truck Company. And Rick, again, thank you, sir, for joining me. I appreciate it. I got a number of folks that are holding that want to jump in. But first, though, want to get some websites out there where drivers can find you at Central Oregon Truck Company. Can they maybe go to Facebook, social media? How can they find you guys?
Yep, they can go to Facebook. I think we're on drivecotc.com. We're centraloregontruck.com. We also, I think, have a Facebook called Joe Flatbetter. And one thing before we get too far, I want to throw something out for other carriers and kind of give kudos to Carrier Edge and the best fleets to drive for program. One of the big things that they are doing, that Carrier's Edge is doing, is making fleets and our industry better and better for drivers. So I encourage other fleets to get involved. We get a ton of data and feedback back from Carrier's Edge on what your driving teams are saying, and you get a lot of information about what other companies are doing that are in that top 20 best fleets. So, let's keep working to improve our overall industry. And, And I think Carrier's Edge has done a great job of promoting that, and I'd like to see more people get involved.
You know, I think just by mentioning it here, this is going to, have a lot of folks look this up and try to get some more information about that, because it really does boil down to the driver, doesn't it? I mean, because, we've got to make sure the guys and the ladies out there are the safest that they can be, and, and be responsive to their needs. Is that at the heart of the discussion for the trucking industry, doing what we can for the guys behind the wheel?
I agree. I totally agree.
Yeah. All right, Rick, let's go first to the phones. I had Ward on the telephone, but he could not hold. But he did mention, he says there is a shortage of qualified technicians, not a shortage of unqualified technicians. Any thoughts on that? A lot of the technician industry these days are driven by computers. So much computer technology drives the technician industry these days. Any thoughts on as to what Ward said?
I think he's correct. With all the emission changes over the past 10 years, I think that qualified technicians that are properly trained are probably in short supply. But that doesn't mean that there's a lot of non-electronic work to be done on our trucks and trailers that travel America roadways. So that's a great place to start. You can start by changing brakes and work your way up and changing oil and doing those kind of things. And then as you work your way up, you'll get into the more of the technical and technological side of the trucks. So yes, we need more qualified technicians, but we also need people who need to start at the bottom and work their way up. And there is still that shortage of people.
Yeah, got to put a little elbow grease in it, so to speak, and work your way up the ladder. All right, I got a break. Coming up on News, Rick, so hold on. Bob in Arizona is going to be the first caller out of the break, Rick, and he wants to know, do you guys have a sleep apnea program? So we'll get to that, Bob. I got a break. You know what I got to do here. Rick, I've got to do the news. As always, at the bottom of the hour, drivers, if you want to talk to Rick Williams, Chief Executive Officer of Central Oregon Truck Company, I've got a few lines open. Again, it's 888-876-2336. So let me update news right now. SiriusXM.
This is Road Dog Trucking News with Mark Willis.
All right, guys, 38 minutes after, and again, the phone number to call, it's 888-876-2336, and again, a brand new voice on the show, Rick Williams, Chief Executive Officer of Central Oregon Truck Company in a beautiful part of the world. And Rick, again, thank you for joining me on the program. We've got a number of folks that are holding. Let's go to Bob first up in Arizona. Bob, welcome. Your question or comment for Rick Williams.
Well, it's sort of a comment and then a bit of a two-part question, but drivers dealing with health and wellness issues is a concern, and it's a problem we face. So sleep apnea and the costs of testing and treatment is a concern. So has COTC looked at helping their drivers with sleep apnea testing and treatment? And then the second part is that something that even comes up in the Carrier's Edge survey for the best fleets to drive for?
Very good, sir. What do you think, Rick?
That's a great question. Obviously, sleep apnea is becoming more of a prevailing affliction on drivers today, but currently there's no real set standard program for sleep apnea. Basically, still under your medical card certification is where you're going to find the health and wellness of a driver and what he needs or she needs to manage that. So we don't have a formal program. It does not come up in Carrier's Edge, but as part of that process, you would, if you had a formal program, then you would list that as one of the programs you have for your driving team members. Now, we don't do testing. We did some testing in one of our sister companies, and once you start doing that with all drivers, all of a sudden doctors like to, and this is hopefully a problem that Donald Trump can help us with, but all of a sudden doctors they have to rule out what you don't have anymore, and that's part of the cost of our medical care and part of our problem in the medical care arena. But to get a doctor, if they even think you have it, they're going to say you have it.
Right.
So
right. I've heard that. Yeah, I've heard that.
It becomes a real problem, and all of a sudden what was happening is in this one test program that we did, there was lots of drivers being diagnosed with sleep apnea. They were on a 30-day get their machines. It was a huge expense. We were getting probably 7 out of 10 drivers were getting machines, and they refused to wear them. And then what happened was when they refused to wear them, their medical cards are only a 30-day medical card, and they were getting revoked. So it can be a double-edged sword for a driver. Sleep apnea obviously is a huge problem if you are afflicted with it, but be careful on how you manage that.
You know, the discussion about sleep apnea, you know, is it going to be a rule? Where is it going to go from here? I mean, this is one of just a myriad of, considerations that are out there for the trucking industry, like ELDs, for example, the mandatory 30-minute break that drivers have got to take. One of the components that Mr. Trump campaigned on during the course of, the time leading up to the election was this whole idea of rolling back every 2 mandates or 2 laws for every new one that is introduced. Now, obviously, the FMCSA would be part of that. With every new rule they rolled out, they'd have to roll back maybe 2 more. What are your thoughts on that, on the whole idea of maybe rolling maybe for every new rule that's rolled out, 2 that have got to be rolled back, easy to say. What do you think that would do for the industry? Would that be a benefit? What are your thoughts on that overall?
Well, you asked me earlier if I was proud of where I started as a driver and where I am today, and yes, I am, because I live in America, and we can still achieve something if we work hard enough.
Yeah.
So I believe in capitalism, and I believe in the fact that less government is best government. But that said, there's some really good legislation that takes place as well. Mm-hmm. So I don't know that just in a pure numbers game of that he's stating that we need to roll back. I think what we need to do is look at legislation that makes sense, and let's move forward with that. And legislation that doesn't make sense or becomes overly onerous on all people to try to earn a living wage for their families and improve their lives, then I think we got to take a look at that and say, hey, we don't need this. We're just creating government jobs.
Are we in a business-friendly administration, in your estimation? I mean, we've got the issue of, say, highway infrastructure. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, do you think the fact that Mr. Trump has been pro-business will translate to more regulations being pro-business for trucking overall? Do the 2 correlate in your estimation?
Here's my hope. I hope that we're in a do the right thing for America business right now. I think that any administration needs to stop worrying about what power they're going to have and for how long, and let's just make the right decisions for America to be a great place to live, work, and play. And let's protect our country. Let's just do the right thing. We don't always just do the right thing. A lot of administrations do what they think they need to do to maintain power. And I'm a little bit different in the fact that I want us to do the right thing for America and the people of America. And so it is, we're a capitalist government. Should it be business friendly? I guess so. If we're a capitalist government, if we're going to become a socialist government, then maybe we shouldn't be as business friendly. But that's my political viewpoint is let's do the right thing for America. Let's do what makes sense. Let's have government where it's needed, and let's keep government out of places that it's not needed.
Yeah, technology, you've got to get your thoughts on that. Looking at things that would have an impact on the overall state of the economy and what everybody's doing out there to try to make ends meet. Technology really becoming more and more prevalent in the trucking industry, from the autonomous vehicles to the all of the other technology on board trucks, like lane departure warning systems, the electronic locking devices, which is moving full steam ahead. barring any last-minute court action that OIDA is able to get through the Supreme Court. But it's moving forward, and a lot of the carriers are adopting that technology on board. Is this going to be needed in your estimation? In other words, how big of a role is technology going to play in any business plans going forward, say, for your organization? How big of a role is that going to play?
Well, we embrace a lot of technology. Of course, the safety technology we fully embrace. I want my driving team members to drive the safest trucks. I want to ensure that they get home every time and that they're healthy and safe. I also want to make sure that the folks traveling the roadways with my driving team are safe. So from a safety technology, I think we just have to continue moving forward on that, and I believe we will. When we look at ELDs, we've been on electronic logs for several years, probably 4 or 5 years. Mm-hmm. And I'll look at it in a different light, okay? ELDs, I believe, create a better life for drivers.
Okay.
So many companies put the onus of production on their driving teams, regardless of the sloppiness of their operations. Mm. When you put the onus of production on your operational team, your internal operations staff, now they have to make sure that they're providing their drivers with loads ahead of time or as soon as they're empty so that they can execute the production. And when you put them on an ELD, what happens is your driver gets back into a normal biological life clock. Mm-hmm. And so when he gets home, when I was driving, when I got home, I needed a day or a day and a half to recover.
Sure.
Because we ran illegal. Well, now, today, our guys, if they get home at noon, they can jump right into their family activities that would be normally taking place at noon. If they get in at 10 o'clock at night, they're probably thinking about going to bed, just like their families do. And if they roll in at 8 in the morning, they're fresh enough to spend the whole day with their families. So we're really eliminating that biological clock of hey, I'm beat because I had to drive all night.
Right. Some drivers have said to me on the program that the ELD is going to make it tougher for them to be out there. And the reason being is that they're always under that 14-hour clock. I mean, they're watching that time tick down, and tick down again. And it's going to create unsafe driving conditions because they've got to get to their next destination in time in order to pick up or deliver. Two sides to that, or how would you respond to those crawlers that have weighed in?
No, I think they're working for companies that have sloppy operations and aren't planning them well.
Okay.
The operations has to set them up for success, and then based on their hours of service, and when they have that technology to see the hours of service available, they can now plan the best load to increase that driver's production. And then it's all about trip planning for the driver, and how he manages his time. But look, at the end of the day, it levels the playing field. We need to level the playing field. If today's driver wants increases, I think we're going to be when you get back to the Trump administration, I think there may be some more building and infrastructure which can spur the economy. We have to have an economic growth period in order to increase driver wages, which absolutely needs to happen. And the way drivers' wage grows is pure and simple supply and demand. So if we're taking out people who are operating illegally and running more production than that they're really allowed on a per truck basis, I think that's a good thing for drivers.
I've got to break one more time, Rick. I got to do traffic and weather. Drivers, jump in. Great conversation going on right now. I got a brand new voice here on the program, a gentleman by the name of Rick Williams, Chief Executive Officer of Central Oregon Truck Company, brand new to the show. And, man, we've covered the waterfront from what is going on with the company, Central Oregon Truck Company, being voted one of the best fleets to drive for. It's part of the Carrier's Edge selection process. I'll have Rick go back over that when we come back out of the break. Talked about technology. We talked about, what do we do to bring new drivers in? Talk about it, guys. You're more than welcome to jump into the mix at 888-876-2336. Let me update what's going on with traffic and weather. 50 after this minute, right here, SiriusXM.
And now, Road Dog Trucking News with Mark Willis.
All right, drivers. Hey, we have flown through this hour, literally have flown right on through it, with Rick Williams, Chief Executive Officer of Central Oregon Truck Company. And Rick, again, a sincere thank you, sir, for joining me on the program. It's great to have you on board. Brand new voice here to the show, and appreciate you joining me, talking with the drivers out there, about various issues that are impacting the industry. I do want to get your websites out there again, where drivers can reach you, phone numbers. How can they reach out? What are the details?
Our phone number is 800-394-0222. And our website is centraloregontruck.com.
Okay, very good, sir. Appreciate it. Are you guys going to the Mid-America Truck Show? You guys make it to the Dallas Truck Show from time to time. Where are you going next?
Mid-America, and then also we'll be at the Truckload Carriers Association Conference in March, which is where the Best Fleets top award is given out. Great industry organization for TCA, so I think it's more the nuts and bolts part of our industry association over the ATA. It's a little more legislative.
Yeah. They have great folks there. I've talked with David Heller quite a bit with the TCA, so really a great guy. A lot of fun to have him on the radio. Let me get your thoughts on this as we get ready to close out. Just in general, a lot of optimism about 2017. Where is the industry going? Your thoughts on this? Do you think a lot of carriers just in general are going to need to maybe reinvent themselves to meet the ever-changing trucking environment out there? What's ahead in your estimation?
It probably depends on the size of the carrier and probably the sophistication of the carrier. I think you'll see more mergers and acquisitions over the next couple of years. I would definitely say that the less technological carriers, which probably tend to be some of the smaller carriers, could have some very difficult times ahead of them. Mm-hmm. There's always a niche for everybody. So I wouldn't say be afraid if you're a small carrier. I'd say be smart and manage your business well. Yeah,
that's a great thing about trucking. I mean, the freight is going to get moved. That's one of the great things about, trucking being so resilient. There are so many great men and women out there doing what they do every single day to make things happen. Rick, I appreciate you joining me on the program, sir. It's been great to chat with you, and let's do this again. Come back soon, and I'll reach out to you, and if you get a chance, send me all of your links, and I'll certainly put them up on our social media sites as well. Hope you had fun, and I'll talk to you again real soon.
Hey, thank you very much for having me, Mark.
Outstanding.
Have a great day.
You bet.